Well, Mr. Secretary, how do you like your job so far?
This is a critical debate for the country. I'm pleased to have it. I think it's a really important debate, and I think my tribute to all of you, which is that this is the kind of debate the American people want us to have. This is about some important choices, and we owe them an open, honest debate about how we're going to fix these problems.
Well, Mr. Secretary, we sure want to help you on that, and we're going to put up here the accumulated budget deficits under the Reagan administration, including under the Bush administration, including $1 trillion of war costs that were unpaid for. So that's where we start. But let me just say, Mr. Secretary, that unless we deal with the seized-up credit markets, none of our budget proposals on either side of the aisle are going to work. And I really want to focus my beginning questions on these today. During the 1980s, our nation faced worse financial problems in the financial sector than we actually do today, although every day that passes seems to get worse. Back then we had 3,000 insolvent institutions. All the banks in Texas failed but one. Continental Bank of Illinois, as you know, went down. Have you had an opportunity yet to meet with the senior statesmen in our country who were responsible for resolving that situation at no cost to our taxpayers?
I have looked very carefully at the record of what they did during that period of time, and I have had the chance to talk to many of those who were there at that time. Yes.
I would like to bring Mr. Seidman and Mr. Isaac over to see you sometime, and I
would welcome that. I would welcome
time for us. I think that it's really worth hearing about what happened, and I think you were about 2 then. I don't know, but I think it might be very interesting for you.
Unfortunately, I was much older then, but older today.
All right. Let me talk about frozen credit lines. The district that I represent has unemployment rates in Toledo, Ohio of 14.3%, going over into Ottawa County, a rural area, 17%, and growing worse each day. At the same time, we are one of 3 leading solar centers in the hemisphere. We have struggled through 20 years of the loss of manufacturing jobs, and I have factory floors right now that cannot get loans to hire hundreds and hundreds of people. What can you do to help us? The second part of that question is in the automotive sector. I represent the most popular vehicle in America, the Wrangler at Chrysler Jeep, and the best GM facility in the hemisphere, GM Hydromatic with the new 6-speed transmission. Our unions, our companies have worked together. If America is going to rebuild its automotive industry, it's going to be from the heart of the 9th District of Ohio. We are stuck into this architecture that we can't seem to extricate ourselves from. Both companies are owned by Cerberus. How can you help us let our industry compete? We are ready to do that, and we are handcuffed. Again, it's dealing with frozen credit lines and being a part of an architecture by which we can't win, solar and auto. And then my final question to you is, what is your position on whether we need to reinstitute the regulations on short sellers the SEC removed in 2006?
Let me go quickly through those. The last is really a question for the SEC.
I hope you had an opinion.
I do not believe that that particular measure, but this is the SEC's responsibility, would be effective in the current environment. But the SEC chairman is looking at a range of things as part of her new responsibilities to be responsive in that area, and I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you about those details. On the automobile industry, as you know, we are looking at how to try to help bring about the very fundamental restructuring that's going to be necessary to get this industry back on a path to long-term viability without government support.
Yes.
This industry is facing extraordinary challenges. The financing environment is making it dramatically worse. You're absolutely right. And we are looking at how best to support that process. Now, the stimulus, the Recovery Act and the budget has very, very substantial increases in tax incentives and other support for clean energy, innovative new technologies, which will be very powerful and beneficial. And I want to come back to where you began, which is small businesses across the country are finding it much harder to borrow. And to fix that requires that we get capital into the system where it's necessary,
yes,
and that we're providing direct support to get these lending markets going again. The stimulus package has very substantial increase in loan guarantees from the Small Business Administration, which we were very, very supportive of, and we are looking at whether we can bring these initiatives together to provide more substantial support for businesses across the country on the lending side.
Mr. Secretary, I appreciate that, and I would hope there would be an iterative process by which we could bring some of these companies to you, whether it's televideo, whether you assign somebody in your office. But every day that goes by and our unemployment gets worse, and I have companies that can't get credit, I'm saying something, somehow we need to be able to link to what you are doing.
Right.
I
And
see
we-
TARP money flying out the window, and I'm looking at our companies and saying something isn't working here.
Right. And we are open to meet with anybody and meeting with people across the country all the time. And as you know, in the automobile industry, we're in daily contact with the full range of people that are critical to making that restructuring plan work.
Mr. Diaz-Villar.